So my birthday was this month, and a fellow patron, Lyndon, sent me a plushie of Kyubey. If you want to know where he is, he's right there. He's right there. He's right there. You can see him. Yep, he's watching over us throughout the episodes now. It was ridiculous because my dog, as I was unboxing, you'll see it in the unboxing video for June that will be at the end of May. You'll see it in the unboxing video, but my dog never bothers anything. He's very well mannered, very well behaved. If I get something out, he doesn't bother it. He leaves it off shelves. He I don't ever have to worry about him trying to attack something. But I have to put Kyubey up on top of the shelf there because as I'm unboxing, my dog is attacking the plush of Kyubey. He never attacks anything, and I was like, so he's trying to save me from making a wish. We're on episode 6 of Puella Magi Madoka Magica, and this is the halfway point of the series. And where we last left off, our dear sweet Sayaka, she has become magical girl. Homura's like, too bad for her. She's doomed herself to eternal damnation, apparently. And Kyoko, who is our new character, was going to just kick her ass, but now has decided, you seem like you could become a threat later. I think I'm going to kill you. Meanwhile, Kyubey's doing nothing. Nothing. He's doing more sitting on that shelf right now than he is in the actual series, and instead is trying to get Madoka to become a magical girl so that she could save Sayaka. And luckily, Homura showed up at the right moment, but as to where the series goes from here, we're at the halfway point. Like I said in the last episode, I still think primarily Madoka is going to become a magical girl, which I don't like. But we've got some comments to talk about. The circumstances surrounding all of that, I guess we'll just wait and see. But this is going to be a slightly longer intro because I've got some things I want to talk about before we start. Revolting Peasant, Death to Boredom, and Trails to the Plus 4714. All talked about the chemicals that you mix together that were kind of blurred out way back in like episode 3 are actually most likely bleach and ammonia, because if you combine them together, they create a chlorine gas that can severely burn the mucous membranes in your lungs and cause death. Clearly, I've not studied such things. It's been a while since I took chemistry. So, that's good to know. Kids at home, don't combine ammonia and bleach. It's a bad deal, apparently. But that is good to know. So thank you, three, for all three of them were like, here's what you need to know. And I was like, thank you. So I appreciate it. GC Novus talked about the first witch being named Gertrude back at the very start of the series, and then the second witch was Charlotte, and now we know the third witch is Kirsten. We don't know the name yet. The comments haven't responded to episode 5 yet, so I don't know the name of the previous witch from the last episode that we just taken care of. Although it wasn't a witch, it was just a familiar. There was still a name involved. I think it's Amy, but we'll see what it ends up being. Julia Chavez, 1839, points out that the telepathy seems to only work when it's in close range, when Kyubey is around, and Kyubey seems to control the connection, so he can keep Homura out. Isn't that convenient of him? It makes sense that Kyubey is able to telepathically engage with Sayaka and Madoka, which is why Homura, I think, is keeping quiet and not telling so much, because she's afraid if she says something, Kyubey is going to be listening, and she seems to not want Kyubey to know anything at all. So we'll see how that goes. Christina Claudino said in episode 2 there was a shot of Mommy's house, and the shadows made it look like she was holding her head in her hands. Foreshadowing to the episode to come. Seems like it. They also pointed out, and yes, some people in the Discord have shared some merchandise, and I'm like, this production company has a sick and twisted sense of humor, because there's Christina points out that during a recap movie, they sold tickets, and the tickets were literally mommy, and you could detach the head when you tore the ticket in half. And I'm like, well, that's disturbing. I think probably the most disturbing piece of media and merchandise I've seen so far is a USB port. It's like a little flash drive, and the cap of the USB, the flash drive, is Mommy's head. You had to pull her head off to use the USB. What the fudge? But yeah, so that was really interesting. Nakirium was trying to be very helpful. I'm horrible at pronunciation. I am notoriously terrible at it. Even when I try my hardest, I often get my tongue tied. And so they were helping me with pronunciation, and they did a very, very good job on Patreon for episode 4 of giving me some ideas of how to say mommy and Madoka, and Homura, and Sayaka, and Hitomi. So thank you. I really appreciate that. I'll try my best. I'm going to be like Homura. I'm not going to guarantee it's going to be right all the time, but I'm going to try actively to be my best. And then finally, I really liked Pancake's comment for episode 4 on Patreon, because I give Sayaka a hard time. I do. And I'll be very transparent with y'all. I don't really care for Sayaka. She's just kind of like, I really feel empathetic towards Madoka. Madoka is like, I feel like an empath towards Madoka. I'm like, yes, I get you. I feel what you're feeling. Girl, don't give in to the peer pressure, but I understand what's going on. So I get it. Sayaka, I have a little bit of a harder time connecting with as a character, but I think Pancake did a good job of pointing out that in episode 2, Sayaka gives a speech about how people oftentimes demean a wish or deserve a wish more than her. And in episode 4, she talks about how Sayaka contemplated what she actually wanted with her wish from Kamijo. In episode 3, she does take Mommy's warning into account. But I do agree with Pancake that Sayaka, her response to her feelings can often be frustrating, because she denies, she berates herself. She recognizes her desires, which is great, but how she deals with them, at least through episodes 2 through 4, is a different story when it's put into action. Now, Homura has shown up to save her. How's she going to respond to this? I feel like none of this is going to go well. And we're at the halfway point of the season, so what are we going to get? I will note 2 things before we start. The Discord does a really good job of spoiler tagging, a good job of being very kosher. There's been 2 things floating around that have had my conspiracy tinfoil hats. Like, I get my tinfoil hat on and I see certain things in the Discord and I'm like, One thing is that people keep talking about the movie being called Rebellion. I mean, does that mean that Madoka is going to become a magical girl and then her and Homura are going to team up against Kyubey and rebel against them? Or they're going to get all of the magical girls to rebel against Kyubey? Is that what Rebellion is talking about? I'm just going to posit my theory right now. We'll see when we get to the movie if it's tested or not. We'll see. And then the other thing is, we've seen this little black cat in the OP. And someone shared a piece of fan art that had Homura with cat ears. And I was like, so is Homura like Luna and can become the black cat? Is that what that is? Is that what that means? Because in Sailor Moon, Luna can become a woman. It happens same with Artemis. And they have like a daughter, Diana, who can do the same thing. So is Homura capable of becoming a cat? Is Homura like Kyubey? Can Kyubey become a person? I'm going to take the tinfoil hat off now and put it aside. We'll just have to see. But I'm really excited to see what ends up happening. I've talked long enough. I've spiked this coffee because it's my birthday month and it felt like something to do. But yeah, so Kyubey's going to watch over us. We'll see. Hopefully my dog won't find a way to murder him in his sleep. But we're going to start episode 6 of Puella Magi Madoka Magica. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And let's see what fresh fun awaits us. If Madoka chooses to be a magical girl after this episode, it's on her. What the fudge? Oh my god. So yeah. Yeah, we've talked about in our discussions how, Kyubey just literally separated the soul from their body. It's like the opposite of Death Cab for Cutie. It's not like when soul meets body. It's like when soul is retracted from the body. So the body is now just a husk, just a shell. Yeah, and it won't ever... So will it never age? Is that kind of the thing? It will never age anymore? It's just going to be this... They're just going to look the same forever? What? Because, that's kind of what it's suggesting. But the thing I imagine is that they don't live long enough for anyone to notice that they're just husks and shells of each other now. And Kyubey has access to their souls. We're going to talk about this episode. This episode was a very good, midway through the season episode. It's like, oh, you think you know what's going on, huh? Well, here's some little pieces of information that you might want to know about. This is the problem, though. Because logic would tell us, Madoka, you just learned what all is going on with these contracts. Do not form a contract with Kyubey. That seems really bad, right? And we're going to talk about the soul gems and everything and all of that. But Homura has pointed out that this monstrosity is supposed to be arriving in 2 weeks. My theory is that Madoka will become a magical girl to fight the monster that will destroy all of them. There's a lot to talk about in this episode. There is the whole conversation Kyubey has with Sayaka, that whole deal. The conversation between Homura and Kyoka, who apparently did not know as much as she thought she knew. The conversation between Madoka and her mom that was such a mixed bag, and then the conversation between Kyoka and Sayaka, and then the whole end scene where, yes, it just all went to hell in a handbasket, and then she gets her soul back and she's like, oh, we're back to normal. Like, whoa. My question is, I mean, are they going to tell Sayaka next episode, be like, by the way, your body is actually no longer connected to your soul? It seems like, yeah, that's the whole thing that Homura was saying. Once you make the contract, you can't take it back. Your soul can't not be the soul gem anymore. Now it's bound to Kyubey. We're going to talk about that whole eating the grief seeds. Yeah, we're going to talk about this whole system and setup. Okay, sure. Sure thing, kids. Sure thing. So let's set that up, shall we? We're going to set up, and I'm going to move the microphone a little bit on here, try to catch my voice as we talk about, we're going to talk the grief seeds and magical girls and how this whole thing works. Because the process is, you have a normal girl, right? Normal girl, we got them. They make a contract with Kyubey. Kyubey, who we still don't know what the hell it is, this little demonic cat, they make a contract with Kyubey. And the contract is that Kyubey will grant any wish. It has some kind of magical evil deity powers, apparently. It'll grant any wish. And the exchange is that it'll grant any wish to the girl. The girl, therefore, splits their soul from their body, and the soul can now use magic to fight witches. That's as far as we've gotten so far in this. That's as far as we've gotten it. They use the magic that has been given to them by Kyubey to fight the witches. That's what we're getting at in this. So let's back up and kind of talk about this episode and how Kyubey is a mother trucking snake in the grass and just doesn't want to tell anybody anything until it's convenient. So, yeah, now, it seems like Kyoko knows Homura a little bit. She's like, what the hell did you just do? Homura is also insanely fast. Homura is really fast, like a damn cat. Let's be real. And so she's really, really fast. She's like, what did you do? And then she's like, you're that irregularity, aren't you? And that's a strange magic you got there. And Sayaka, the one thing that I think one thing that gets me about Sayaka is that Sayaka has never trusted Homura. But the frustrating part about this episode is that Sayaka won't listen to Madoka at all. Madoka tries to say that's not how it was. It wasn't that mommy didn't, it wasn't that Homura didn't help mommy. Mommy tied her up. I wish that two things would happen in this series, and these are teenage girls, and I just want to slap both of them. I wish that Madoka would get would get some balls and finish her sentences and would speak up and be like, hey, no, mommy tied Homura up. Homura couldn't help her. It's mommy's fault that she didn't get help. That's what I wish. And I wish that Madoka would be like, how you're acting, Sayaka, around Kyoko and Homura is how mommy was acting around Homura. So it's just this big cycle, right? But I wish she would get some balls and speak up, is what I would wish. And I will go to the mom conversation in a little bit about that. And I wish Sayaka would listen. But Sayaka is not interested in listening. She's already made up her mind about Homura, and she's not going to change her opinion. Which Madoka did say she was stubborn, but it's so frustrating, right? And she tells Homura to get out of the way, and Homura's like, "Meh." Now, Homura was in the shadows a lot in this episode. And Kyubey does not seem to exactly know who or what Homura is. So, again, I think it's good that there's a character in the series Kyubey is maybe a little bit uneasy about, because that's a good thing. That means that maybe there's a chance of fighting back against Kyubey. And so then, yes, Sayaka-chan. But then Homura's standing there in between. I like Homura is in between the two of them and Kyoka, and she's like, she's just unconscious. And then she says, who are you and whose side are you on? And she says, I'm an ally to those who maintain their composure and an enemy to idiotic aggressors. Which, okay, so let's put up here Homura. We don't know a lot about Homura at all. We know that she's very fast and athletic, which we also saw earlier on in the other episodes. Could she be the cat from the OP? We don't know, but that little fan art on the Discord has made me think that that's what she actually is. How she is that, I don't know. Also, what is Kyubey? We don't know that either, so whatever. But she says that she is with those that maintain composure and an enemy to fools. That reminds me, I said in the reaction of the witch that was Kirsten in the last witch we fought was Kirsten with the TVs. Share TV said, I like fools, I don't like fools. So I wonder if that relates to Homura in some way, because Homura says that she doesn't like fools. She's like, I don't like people that are foolish. But she clearly likes Madoka because she's trying to save her, and she calls her a fool. So it's kind of like, I like fools, I don't like fools. And then the whole I don't want to work. Maybe it's tying back to the idea she doesn't want to work for Kyubey. I don't know. We're going to talk about this in a minute, though. And then she says, which one are you? Are you going to keep your composure, or are you going to be an idiot? I like that threat there, because it's a very chill threat. She's like, are you going to keep your composure and not be an ass? Or are you going to be an ass and we're going to fight? And Kyoko's like, no, I don't really want to do that. And then she starts to get mad, but I love that it just shows Homura in the shadows. I love it. And she's like, have we met before? And she's like, I wonder. So they have met before. She just didn't realize it until the moment. And then when she sees her at the arcade, she's like, yeah, I know you. Like, what's the deal? I thought that was kind of like a nice parody of in Sailor Moon, because the big joke in magical girl anime like Sailor Moon is, well, all they are in different outfits. Don't you recognize them from everyday life? Like, that's kind of the joke, and I felt like they were kind of parodying it here with Kyoko knowing Homura. And then Kyoko, though, is not dumb. She's like, I can't read this girl, and so I don't know if I want to take her head on, because that seems like a bad idea. I've seen how fast she is. She could hurt me. And she's like, I don't know what you've got up your sleeve. Yeah, it's good to know that Kyoka is normally a little bit more cautious when she doesn't think she has the upper hand. She thinks she could kill Sayaka, so Sayaka's not a threat to Kyoka, but she doesn't know if she can handle Homura or not, so she's like, I'm going to be cautious and not take my chances. She's like, I'm going to back down for today. And then Homura's like, yeah, that's smart of you to do so. And then she leaves. She gets on. I like they show her bouncing away for quite a while to show her how high up she goes before she leaves out of sight. The animation on Kyubey's little chibi form throughout this episode was freaking hilarious. It was ridiculous. He looked so... And Kyubey doesn't say a damn thing unless it's convenient for Kyubey. Let's just establish that. Kyubey skirts around and spins things so many times in this episode. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? She's like, did you save us? And Homura's like, how many times do I have to warn you? And at this point, I don't blame Homura for getting a little bit frustrated with Madoka, because she's like, I keep warning you, stop messing around, and you keep messing around. Now, Madoka's doing it because Sayaka's her best friend. So that makes more sense. The fact that Homura doesn't register that is interesting. And how old is Homura? If Homura's been in this, if these bodies don't age and her soul has been separated for quite some time, who knows how old she is? How long has she been isolated and alone? We don't know. How big of a fool are you? What's interesting is, and I like how her eyes kind of like just like zero in and we close in on them. What I like about it is that she calls Madoka a fool. And I think that that might be good to note when we have the conversation with the mom, who's like, Madoka, you're so perfect and you're a wonderful child. It's like that comparison of how the mom views Madoka and then how Homura views her. She's like, you're being an idiot. And Madoka, of course, is like, oh no, they call me like a fool. And it's like, well, you're not paying attention. She's like, I've warned you countless times not to get involved, right? And then and then Madoka's kind of like, but she's like, I will not hold back against a fool. And then, yeah, she's like, and then she walks away. And Madoka asks her why. Why is she doing this? But I don't think Madoka, she asks her why. Homura's not going to say while Kyubey's there. And Kyubey's like, well, she's obviously planning something. I'm like, bitch, stay away. Quit this. This isn't any of your business. And Kyubey tries to get Madoka, he's like, be on your toes, like she might hurt you. Clearly Homura is not, or she already would have done so. So Kyubey's just trying to get Madoka against Homura, and I'm like, ugh. But the way that Kyubey looks towards Homura, like we can't see, Kyubey has the same face no matter what happens. No matter what happens, Kyubey never has a different face. It's to the point where it's very creepy. Like I'm almost expecting at one point, now that we know its mouth is on its freaking back, I'm like expecting its mouth to like open up and try to bite somebody, you know, and be like some kind of Lovecraftian horror. I'm expecting that. But the fact that we don't see like any facial expression from Kyubey is creepy. And it's frustrating because we don't know if Kyubey's mad, if Kyubey's curious, if Kyubey's scared, if they're fearful, if they're angry. We don't know. The only kind of emotion we see is at the end when Kyubey's like, why did you do that to Madoka about throwing the soul gem? And they're like, Akemi Homura, could you be what? Could you finish your sentence, Kyubey? Could you go ahead and tell us? Nope. Okay, never mind. Fine. Anyway, so this episode's called This Is Definitely Wrong. Yes, this episode is definitely wrong. The contents of this episode, the system that Kyubey has with these girls is definitely wrong. Yes, I absolutely agree. So we have multiple things going on. We have the House of Miki, which is where Sayaka is from. Okay, so these witches' seeds, if we look at the side-by-side comparison, the grief seeds for the witch are black and tan and everything, and they don't look much different from the soul gems. I'm just saying. They seem rather similar, but they take away all of the impurity from the soul gem and suck it away. He's like, you should be fine for a while. So let's go through how this goes. So when you use magic, this is where the system gets a little complicated, right? So you use magic to fight witches, but two things happen. One, if you fight the witches and you defeat them, you get what's called a grief seed, right? But you also put toxin in your soul from the magic. Okay. And you have to give the grief seed the toxins after you obtain it. That seems terrifying. If I was like, oh, so you mean that the contract I made with you is not only separating my soul from my body, but is also causing it to become impure, like, constantly, and I have to keep killing witches in order to purify my own soul, but in the process of killing witches, I'm also impurifying my soul, so it's just this vicious, endless cycle of me killing witches to purify my soul, but the only reason I need to kill witches, but it's like, you're killing witches, but the process of killing witches is causing your soul to be, but here's the thing, we're going to talk about this, it says you should be fine for a while. And so then it says, oh, it's pitch black. And he says, it's dangerous now. If you taint it any further, a witch might hatch. So you put all of the toxin into the grief seed, but if it gets too much, it'll create another witch. Well, that's just a big old cycle. You just create another witch if you do that. So they're like, oh, well, no. If you get the grief seed and you put the toxin in it, so what you do instead is just give it to me. He's like, it's fine, give it to me. So he does, and he like rolls it around like an apple, And then it's it's like the little back opens up like a hatch, like a toy, sucks in the egg, and then that's it. And the back of it looks like a little teardrop. Imagine that, like the tears of the Behelit. So yeah. And then it's like, okay, it's harmless now. Like Kyubey was just like a nuclear waste disposal in that moment. And she's like, oh, you ate it? And he's like, oh, that's just another one of my duties. I like that Kyubey phrases it as his duties. Like, oh, it's my duty to grant you any miracle wish. Oh, it's my duty to extract your soul from your body. Oh, it's my duty to eat witches' seeds. So he's like, yeah, it's just something I do. No big deal. I just get paid in minimum wage. I like when its tail twitches. I almost wonder when its tail twitches if that means it's aggravated. I don't know. So he's like, but in order to keep your soul gem pure, you need to find a new grief seed. So this is the cycle, right? Because she's like, what? What do you mean? She's like, is it important to keep it clean? And he says, well, Sakura Kyoko is strong, right? If you have spare grief seeds, you could let loose and waste as much magic as you want in any fight. That's what makes Kyoko so powerful. And she's like, but that just means you can't just sacrifice innocent people to get the grief seeds. So here's the thing. If you have, we're going to put down here, you could give the grief seeds to Kyubey, and Kyubey, quote unquote, disposes of them. Now, whether that makes Kyubey more powerful or not, we don't exactly know. But if you have spares, you can use more magic. You can use more magic, and then you can use the seeds to get rid of the extra impurities, right? But the problem is, in order to get the spares, that means that sometimes you have to let people die to make witches. This is not a sustainable system. This system is madness. This is absolute madness. And I'm like, if you thought about it, girls, for more than 5 seconds, you'd suddenly realize, now wait a minute, Kyubey, because what he's suggesting is, well, you know, I gave you this special wish, so, you know, now your soul's split from your body, and you have to fight witches because the witches are attracted to you now. I don't know what else to tell you. You're going to notice them. They're going to be attracted to you. We just got to get rid of them. It's like something off of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That's what this little Kyubey would fit right in with Danny DeVito and Charlie and the others, right? But I feel like it's a little bit weird when if you fight the witches, you get this grief seed, right? This magic little grief seed. And then you have some options. You need to use the grief seed to cleanse the toxin from your soul that you got from fighting witches. But then, you know, if you put too much of the toxin, you're going to create even more witches that you still got to fight to cleanse yourself by getting the grief seed from them. But then you give it to Kyubey, or you collect spares so that you can use the seeds to use more magic. But using more magic is going to involve getting more grief seeds. But in order to get more grief seeds, you have to make more witches. It's a damn pyramid scheme. So Sayaka has involved herself in a pyramid scheme. That's what this is, right? Because here's the thing. It's like, oh, well, you know, you've just got this one soul gem here. And if you got one grief seed, then you can purify. But then if you get 2 grief seeds, you can use even more magic. But then if you use that, you're going to need some more spare grief seeds. And then if you tell your friends about it, you get some grief seeds from them too. And we'll just keep going the train and keep the chain letter going. It's a damn pyramid scheme. Kyubey is involved in multi-level marketing. We need to stop his ass now. But yeah, how is this sustainable? What? How did this? My big question. I have a couple big questions. One, how did all this get started? Who was the first magical girl? And who started all this nonsense? How did Kyubey find out this was even possible? That they could do it? What is that? Are we ever going to find out, or is it just going to be one of those like assumptive things that we never learn of? 2, is it just, he says that you need to get grief seeds to keep your soul pure. Well, the solution to not pure, you would think on the surface, the solution is, oh, well, just don't fight witches. Because if you don't fight witches, your soul gem's not going to become impure and you're not going to need the grief seed. The problem is, by agreeing to the contract, your soul has been extracted from your body. It is using magic 24/7 to keep you alive. To keep your body and your soul together is using magic. So you have to fight witches now to get the grief seed, to purify your soul, because if you don't, that's the other question. If you don't purify your soul gem and it gets impure, do you become a witch? I think that's what happens. I think if you don't purify, I think if you don't get rid of the toxins in your soul, then you become a witch. That's my theory. My theory is if you don't purify it, you become a witch. Because otherwise, then why not just don't purify it? Don't do what he says. Oh my God. It's a pyramid scheme. This is insane. And she's like, well, you can't just, sacrifice innocent people to get the grief seeds. And he's like, the more you use your magic, the more it taints your soul gem. Well, now you have no choice. You'll never stand a chance. But here's the thing. Kyubey has established at the end of this episode, he's like, I can't just tell these girls the truth. They'll freak out. That their souls are now disconnected from their bodies, that I'm controlling them, that they could die at any moment and, suffer in hell forever. I don't know. Yeah. So rather than tell Sayaka up front what's going on and saying that, yeah, if you don't purify your soul gem, you're going to become a witch or you're going to die or, whatever. Instead, he says, oh, well, Kyoko has a lot more power than you, so you're never going to be able to face her unless you collect more grief seeds, and that's just the way things are. No, that's not just the way things are. That's just the narrative that you're giving her. You're just pushing that narrative, and that's pretty much it. And she's like, oh, you think? And then she's like, Mommy-san never had enough grief seeds either, but she was still able to fight just fine. Are some magical girls more talented? And that's when Kyubey says, yes, some definitely are. I like for example, though, just a brief interlude, I like Sayaka's room, all the mirrors and all the blue items. Like, I just really like that a lot. But Kyubey's like, yes, some girls are more talented naturally than others. Some have bigger souls, I guess. And she's like, well, that's not fair at all. And he's like, well, there's nothing you can do about that. Kyoko's talented and she's got experience to back it up. It's not that her soul is better, she just has more experience. But there are prodigies with potential to surpass Kyoko even without experience. And that's why he says Madoka is one of them, one of the prodigies. So he's like Kaname Madoka. And so at this point, Kyubey tries to prey on Sayaka being her friend. And says, well, if you really want an edge in your fight with Kyoko, you could always ask her. It's very clear that Kyubey is still trying to understand humanity and how the human brain works. And it's been preying on little girls and trying to understand how young teenage girls' minds work. And he's trying to play this like mean girl game with Sayaka, being like, well, Sayaka, you want to fight Kyoko, don't you? Because Kyoko wanted to fight you. So that must mean that you want to fight her. And, if you want to edge in your fight, you could get Madoka to become a magical girl and gang up with you and beat her up. I will give Sayaka's character a lot of credit in this episode. I haven't liked her up until like last week. And now in this episode, I'm like, I kind of like her now. I'm like, no, girl, I appreciate that she did not try to throw Madoka under the bus. Whenever Kyubey's like trying to get her to like convince her to turn Madoka into a magical girl or convince her to make a contract with him, as he like goes to screaming like, never make a contract with me, Sayaka, come on. Sayaka's like, no, I don't want to do that. And again, watch, every time you say something that Kyubey doesn't like, his little tail swishes. He's like a cat. He's like, Every time Sayaka says something or something agitates him, his little tail flickers. It's good. I love it. She's like, no, she's like, this is my fight. And I won't get her involved. I love that. I love it. I was like, good on you, Sayaka. Way to go. Way to not cave. That was good on you. So anyway, we have, on the other side of town, we have, I like the idea of Kyoka in the arcade, and it says, note to customers, please do not eat or drink while playing. Entry is for the purpose of hitting on people. Solicitation or otherwise attempting to take customers to other locales is strictly forbidden. Oh, so it's basically saying, like, don't harass people or try to, like, take them away. That's freaking creepy. What? And so then we have, what is this game called? It's called Dog Drug Reinforcement. So what the fuck? What? Like, this game, why is it called Dog Drug Reinforcement instead of Dance Dance Revolution? Oh my god, what? I do love, Kyoka is such a tsundere. She's like Bakugo on acid, but I love her character design. I love the Pocky Sticks. I would cosplay as her in a heartbeat. I would have the red wig and the Pocky Sticks and like the blue hoodie and like the ripped jeans. I would like cosplay as her, either that or in the outfit. I freaking love it. She has such a cool character design. It'd be so much fun to cosplay. So then Homura comes up to her. Also the what is this? The dog drug reinforcement. It says like Inudorama, like the games, and it says let's step. So Homura comes up to her, right, with her boots and the fur. And then she's like, yo, what do you want this time? And she says, I want to leave this city to you. So Homura decides to, like, she knows Kyoko is not somebody to mess around with. She also knows that Kyoko is kind of a hothead and she's very persistent. So Homura tries to do the diplomatic thing. She's like, fine. She's like, let's handle this like young adults. She's like, I'm going to leave the city to you. It's your territory. And I like that breaks the Pocky Stick. And Kyoko's like, what's with this change of heart? I thought you wanted me to leave. And she's like, girls like you are fit to be magical girls. There's an aspect of Homura that feels very old now, the last couple episodes. Now that I think about it, there's an aspect of her that feels a little bit more mature and older than the other girls. I can't place it. If she's been, stuck this way for a long time, that would kind of make sense. But we don't know that much yet. But she's like, you're fit to be a magical girl. Clearly. And she's like, Sayaka is not qualified. Because she's too good. Like, Sayaka has a good heart. Kyoka is kind of a bitch. And she's like, no, Sayaka's not meant to be a magical girl. And Kyoka's like, well, that was my plan from the start, was to get rid of her. She's like, that was my plan. But what about that Sayaka girl? If you just leave her be, she'll definitely butt in again. And Homura's like, I want to end this as peacefully as possible. Now that's the big difference. Homura wants to end things peacefully. She's like, let's just talk things out. Let's be reasonable about it. Let's negotiate. What's fun and sad at the same time is I think Madoka and Homura kind of want to handle things the same way. The problem is that Homura can't tell Madoka everything that she knows. Madoka doesn't understand, so she can't comprehend, so she, is confused, and it just makes for an all-around bad situation for everybody. So she's like, I want to end as peacefully as possible. She's like, stay out of it. I'll take care of it. And Kyoko says, you still haven't told me the most important thing, though. And I love when she swishes her hair around, saying, who the heck are you? And Homura's like, I don't want to tell you. And she's like, what is in this for you? You know what's kind of weird? And it's kind of going with the cat, sort of, with the cat conspiracy theory that she's a cat like Kyubey, only she's disguised as a human. Whenever she asks a question, how Kyubey just stares into the screen, unblinking, and doesn't do anything with his face? Homura does the exact same thing in this moment. When she asks who Homura is, Homura kind of tilts her head and just stares, but she doesn't answer. Also, I think it's weird that behind her are all these crane games of, like, plushes. Maybe Homura is the cat. Maybe she is. And then she says, the Walpurgisnacht will descend upon the city 2 weeks from today. One, what the hell is the Purge is Nacht? 2 weeks. What the fudge? So far, the witch encounters have been very random. Not only very random, but they've also been kind of just sporadic and wherever, and there's been no real way to detect them unless you have the soul gem. Here's the other thing, too. They use the soul gem to find the witches. So they're, like, attracted. The soul gems are attracted to the witches. I feel like there's a relation there. We just don't know exactly what it is. And Kyubey is conveniently leaving a lot of information out because they're like, oh, you'd freak out if I told you. If I told you the truth, you couldn't handle it. How do you know about this wall purge schnat? How do you know about this? What is this? Is it the big monster at the very, very beginning of the series that Madoka, like, saw Homura fighting by herself and Kyubey was trying to convince her to become a magical girl to help save the world with it? Maybe that was a little glimpse of the future and Homura didn't want her to become a magical girl. Now, Kyoko says, how do you know that? So Kyoko knows what it is. And the moment that she, like, every time Homura tries to make this, like, dramatic statement, she goes, that's a secret, and goes. So I don't know. Her hair is full of secrets. It's huge and full of secrets. I don't know why she flicks the hair back. I feel like whenever Kyubey gets annoyed by something, he flicks his tail, and she flicks her hair. So I feel like they're related. I feel like Kyubey and Homura are more closely connected than we believe. And she says, once it's defeated, I'll leave this city. So that's curious. Homura seems like she is determined to keep Madoka from becoming a magical girl, but she also said she's going to leave the city once this thing is defeated in 2 weeks. So I don't know. I don't know what her deal is. Like, is she giving up on Madoka? Does she not think that she can save her anymore and she just wants to get rid of the biggest threat and then leave and be like, whatever you do now is up to you? I'm so curious. I'm really curious what this means. But she tells Kyoko all of this, and she says, so this thing, huh? That'd be pretty hard to handle alone, but we might win if we teamed up. And then she gets the perfect score. And of course my dogs are running right now. And so she's like, we could team up together. I love that shot where it says perfect and she has the Pocky stick. Like, that's such a good shot. And then, like, the girl dancers are framing Kyoko. She's like, do you want to team up and we can fight this monster together? Which is not a bad idea. It's like, are you going to get like a million grief seeds if you fight this big thing? So I'm kind of like, why wouldn't you team up together? Why wouldn't you want to do that? What's the big deal? But then there's like this halo with an angel wing flying behind her that the perfect sign word like becomes. And she offers her the Pocky sticks, being like, want some? Want to join me? Huh. So I don't know. They go back to look for the witch's familiar, but it's nowhere to be seen. And poor Madoka's like, hey, you know, if we keep hunting witches, we're probably going to run into Kyoko again. Don't y'all want to talk it out and, you know, become friends again? So this part here, and I'm going to run out of space on Whiteboard Coon, but Madoka's whole thing at this point, I'm going to move this over just a wee bit so it's easier to get a handle on. Madoka's whole thing, if we go by her logic, is that she wants, and my dogs are so loud, she wants them all, she's like, let's just get along. She's like, let's just get along and work together. Friendship is magic. Let's just all sing Kumbaya and work together, right? But we've kind of established that once you become a magical girl, you're just thinking about yourself, which your soul's disconnected from your body, so I can imagine why that would be a priority. And she's like, we can't avoid it. And she's like, you're acting just like Mommy and Kyoko are, in that you just want to save yourself and you're fighting everybody else and you're not working together, right? She's like, we should try to talk things over. And Sayaka's like, we're just going to end up fighting. And that's all. She's like, we can't talk it over with her. And she's like, because what she says, she's trying to use human beings as bait to get more grief seeds. So Sayaka's is suggesting that they have such a moral difference in how they're going about things. She's like, there's no way that we can get together. And I mean, I get where Sayaka is coming from, but I'm also like, I get where Madoka's coming from as well. And I feel like Sayaka was going to say to her, I was waiting for her to say, well, you're not a magical girl. You wouldn't understand how it is. It's like, yeah, no, she wouldn't. And she doesn't need to. And she's like, well, you became a magical girl to fight witches. And she's like, that girl's not a witch. She's a magical girl just like you. If you give her a chance, you could become friends. And she's like, just like you. She's doing things differently. And this line, Madoka says it. Because Sayaka says, after she says they could become friends, Sayaka's like, well, she does things differently, but she's also trying to hunt down witches, right? And Madoka says, just like you. You all are doing your own thing. And she's like, and Homura-chan too. And that's the one beef I have with Sayaka, is that Sayaka doesn't like Homura-chan because she thinks that she's responsible for Mommy's death, but she's not. And she's like, if Mommy hadn't fought with Homura, then that wouldn't have happened. And she's like, you saw her, didn't you? She waited for Mommy to get killed before she came to defeat the witch, which is not true. She was tied up. She didn't have a choice. And at that point, she let Mommy die because she wanted the grief seed. And Madoka's like, that's not what happened. And I wish Madoka would stand up and say that a little louder for the people in the back, that that's not what happened, that Mommy literally had her tied up. And that's the thing. I feel like Sayaka is going to do the same thing with Kyoko, get her bound up to where she can't help her, and she's just going to end up getting killed. And I'm like, I think Madoka realizes that Sayaka is going to end up getting killed because she's just being the same way that Mommy was. And they only think about themselves. But Sayaka's only thinking about herself, right? And she says, I understand that now. That Mommy-san was an exception. And maybe she was. I do think Mommy was thinking about herself too, because she could have made Madoka go away, but then she was like, wait, you'll be my friend forever? Never mind, you can become a magical girl too. I'm like, Mommy was thinking of herself for sure in the end, and that's what got her killed. But she also was a rare exception, I think, in that she did genuinely care for Sayaka and Madoka. She just, didn't make the good decisions. She's like, all the other magical girls are like those two. Well, you only know those two. You don't know any other magical girls, right? You only know Mommy and Homura and Kyoko, so how do you know that? You don't. And Madoka's like, no. And she's like, that familiar last night could have been small, but it could have killed someone. And who knows, its next target could even be your parents. I mean, I get that Sayaka wants to keep her safe, and that's cool for Sayaka to have those priorities. She's like, can you forgive someone if they let that happen? I'm not just fighting against witches. I wanted this power to fight to protect the people I care about, and I would fight anyone worse than the witches, even if they're a magical girl. And poor Madoka, she's like, that's not what we signed up for. Why does it have to be this way? Why can't we all just get along? And I'm like, right? And then Sayaka just walks away. And so then Madoka asks Kyubey to say something to her. And you know what that little bastard says? He goes, well, the only thing I could do is tell her she's being reckless. I don't know. I'm like, bullshit, you could tell her more. You didn't even tell her she's been reckless before. No. What does Kyubey say? Kyubey looks Madoka straight in the face and says that she has no chance of winning against Homura or Kyoko at this rate. But she won't listen to me. I'm like, you were telling her to actively go kill more witches so she could fight Kyoko. You were encouraging it, Kyubey. Oh my god. Nope. So anyway, at first, when Madoka wakes up, I thought that it was like Kyubey trying to sneak back into her room, but Kyubey is just satisfied with hanging out with Sayaka now, so she don't care. I do think that the mascots and the plushes that are in her room, there's a teddy bear and the seal. There's actually the dog there that looks like a Cocker Spaniel with the blue collar and the bell. That is actually Lady from Lady and the Tramp. I'm amazed that Shaft Studio didn't get a copyright infringement violation from the Disney Corporation, because that's clearly Lady and the Tramp. Also, I think Lady and the Tramp is interesting as a choice because in the movie Lady and the Tramp, the Disney movie, Lady is this little posh dog that's been raised in the lap of luxury. She's very spoiled and privileged, and she doesn't really know how the real world works. And in the movie, she has to meet Tramp and get kicked out of the house in order to figure out how the real world is and to realize what she had. So I think it's rather fitting for that plush to be here and representing Madoka, because Madoka is super innocent and doesn't quite understand the adult world, but I'm still amazed that they got away with it, with including Lady. So yeah, so she wakes up. That clock is the least weird thing in this room. Honestly, the weirdest thing about this room that drives me crazy in Madoka's room is that there's way too many patterns. There's like I liked Sayaka's room because it was all blue themed and there were like the blue rabbits on her bed and everything was like blue and white and kind of had the same color scheme. Madoka is like purple and pink and red and cream colors. It looks like some 80s like backwash and it's like heart prints, flower prints, different flower prints, checkers. It's like all these patterns and I'm like, you need to pick one, girl. You need to pick one and roll with it, not have every single one. But so her mom wakes her up and she manages to go downstairs to see what's up with her. And her mom like has she has like the bath drawn, everything. And then as she wakes up, she goes downstairs and says, "Welcome home. There's potato salad in the fridge." Like the husband left her some food. So this scene where the mom has whiskey on the rocks poured at midnight. The mom is something else. Where she has the whiskey drawn, and then Madoka comes down to sit with her, saying, "Can we talk?" Now I'm assuming Madoka has orange juice because I don't think it's a different color than the whiskey on the rocks that the mom has after her bath. And they cheers each other. That part was really cute. I like them cheersing each other. But so this conversation is so interesting. And she asks the mom, she's like, "Look, a friend of mine's in a tough situation." And she talks about it. And she's like, what she's doing and saying probably isn't wrong. And no, I do think that Sayaka is coming from a place of meaning well. She's trying to protect people. She's trying to do right by the contract she signed with Kyubey. She has good intentions. Like we talked about in the intro, it's just sometimes her method of delivering those intentions is not effective. And so Madoka's like, yeah, what she's saying isn't wrong, but I'm afraid she's going to get hurt. The more she tries to do what's right, the worse it gets. And so the mom's sitting there. She's like, "Oh yeah, that happens a lot." She's like, "It sucks, but you can't expect a happy ending by doing what's right all the time." And I do think there is something there. Like the mom's trying to tell her, she's like, "Hey, sometimes bad stuff happens to good people. And sometimes you try to do something right and you get punished for it. It's like the no good deed goes unpunished. It's like it just happens sometimes. And that's part of being an adult is that sucks. When doing right doesn't always get you a reward or it gets you a fair, happy ending. The more people get stubborn and insist that they're in the right, the further away happiness gets." And so what I was trying to mean from the mom at this moment is that, yeah, sometimes good people get treated unfairly. They don't get the happy ending. And she's like, the more you try to maintain that control, the more unhappy you can get. Basically, at first I was like, her thing is about being flexible. I mean, what you should get from it is that you should be able to be flexible and go with the flow. Which seems to be what Homura is doing. Homura's like, "Fine, I can't get what I want this way. Well, let me try this way. Oh, you're not going to do that? Well, let's try this." Homura seems to kind of embody that idea of, okay, well, if I'm not going to get what I want this way, let's try this way and compromise and do whatever. So if you try to just insist you're right all the time and push your view and not be accepting of any possible compromise or change or flexibility, then you're not going to ever be happy because you can't always be right, even if you are technically in that area. She's like, it's not fair if you can't be happy, even though you're not doing wrong things. And she's like, yeah, then what do you think I should do? And I was like, yeah, this is a great conversation. This is going great. But then the mom says, that's not a problem that can be solved by someone that's not involved. So she's like, well, if it's not any of your business, you really don't have any, say. She's like, if it's not your business, then stay out, which is exactly what Homura said. That's what she seems to be saying. But then, as Madoka's like, the mom goes, well, do you want to solve this even if it's not the nicest way to do it? And I was like, wait a minute, what? I was like, what are we saying, Mom? What do you mean, not the nicest way, huh? She's like, you have to make a mistake for her. And I'm like, make a mistake for her? She's like, somebody has to be in the wrong to balance out her need to be in the right. And I'm like, oh, okay, yes, yeah, that someone does have to be wrong for her to be right. Okay. And she's like, do something wrong. And she's like, oh, tell a white liar or run away from something scary. I'm like, what? The thing of it is, the mom has no clue what Madoka is talking about. She thinks that they're probably just like some teenage drama. She's like, oh, your friend is probably like, oh, just doing some teenage stuff. Well, just tell white lie like you're dating the kid next door, or run away from a monster or something and get her to think that you're scared of something, you know, something simple like that. And I'm like, do you know what you're telling your daughter? Yeah. Sometimes you realize that that was actually the best choice in the end. I'm like, what? No, I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm like, are you sure? You sure about that? Sometimes when you hit a dead end with no real alternatives, making a big mistake is an option. I'm like, it's an option, but I don't know if it's the best option. What I think she's getting out of it, she kind of goes about it in a roundabout way, but the idea about like lying or making a mistake, I mean, I don't know in a big life or death situation as this, if that's an option I would be comfortable choosing. But then she ties it back around and says, do you think she'll understand I'm doing it for her own good if I do something that's, you know, questionable? And the mom is like, well, she may or not, especially at first, but I told you it might not be the nicest way to do it. So, I mean, I don't know. There's parts that are questionable with that, because I'm like, I kind of get what she's saying in that, you know, if your friend thinks that she's right, you know, you might have to like put her in her place. But I'm like, I don't know if making a mistake or lying is the way to go about it. I don't know if I agree with the mom on that front. She's like, would you rather give up on her or give her the wrong idea about you? I'm like, well, if you're lying or making a mistake and it's not true and it's falsifying something to try to like, you know, manipulate her into making a decision, then that would give the wrong idea about her. I'm like, wait, what? And then she says, you grew up to be a good girl. I'm like, how? I'm not so sure. You don't lie and you don't do anything bad. She clearly took after the father. You're always trying hard to do what is right. You're already a wonderful child. She's like, so you're already going to turn out fine, so I can tell you this. She says, that's why you should start learning how to make mistakes before you grow up. Now, this part, the making a mistake before you grow up part, I took that to mean that it's okay. It's okay to fail. And that part I do agree with, because I think that there's like a big push for kids to be perfect and to be always successful and to always make the best perfect decisions. And that's not, one, feasible, and eventually you are going to fail. So when you fail, what do? A lot of kids like self-destruct or implode because they don't know how to handle that failure. And so I do get her idea that, you know, you should make mistakes now and experiment while you're growing up. I get that part. I'm not so sure I know how this ties into making a mistake on Sayaka's behalf. And I don't like how Madoka seems to be maybe translating this. And she's like, learn how to make mistakes. And she's like, you're recover from injury faster when you're young, which is true. And if you learn to fall down now, it'll be easy for you later on. But I'm like, I don't know if the message should be you should intentionally fail and intentionally fall down and hurt yourself so that you can like get back up now. I feel like the answer should be you should do what's in your heart that's right. And if things don't work out the way you want them to, that's okay. That's part of life. But I don't know if the message of you should intentionally fall down and hurt yourself now while you're a kid so that you won't do it when you're older, or that you'll know how it hurts now so that it won't hurt as much later. I don't know if I agree with that. I'm like, the mom sends a lot of mixed messages in this scene. And I'm kind of like, what? Just like when you get older, making mistakes gets harder. I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if I agree with that. I feel like as a kid, making mistakes felt a lot harder than they do as an adult. As an adult, you have enough knowledge to kind of know how to handle the repercussions. But I guess it's because you made mistakes when you were younger. So maybe she's tying back around to that. The more things you're responsible for, the less mistakes you can make. Which, And she says, I see. And I kind of get what the mom's saying, but in the context of this situation and the stakes of this situation, as we see later on in this episode, I don't think this was the best advice. And she's like, isn't that hard? And she's like, being an adult is hard for everybody, which that part is true. That's why they let you drink. And I'm like, alcoholism. Sure. I'm like, I don't know if taking advice from your buzzed mother at midnight is the best advice you should be doing, Madoka. And she's like, I want to grow up and drink with you. And she's like, well, hurry up and get older. As difficult as it is, it's fun being an adult. But, I mean, what the mom should also say is, if you want to grow up with me and have a drink, don't become a magical girl, because then you'll be stuck in an immortal child body. With your soul separated from you. So, I'm really surprised, because I thought that the boy, whenever we cut to Sayaka and found out that he had left for home, I thought that the route the story was going was, oh, okay, now it's going to be like, he's not going to be grateful for her anymore, and he's going to kick her to the curb, and he's going to go home and practice his violin. Now, Homura made the comment that people are going to start forgetting about her, or they start forgetting about you, and Mommy seemed to be kind of in the same boat. Once you become a magical girl, and you're pretty much like, you know, the Walking Dead, or a zombie, as Kyoko said, then people start forgetting about you. I wonder if he's going to start forgetting about Sayaka, and that's going to be part of it, that people start forgetting about you as a magical girl. Maybe, I don't know. I do like that she seemed, probably my favorite part about Sayaka in this entire episode is that when she hears the violin music playing, it's almost like she's kind of put at ease, and she's like, oh, he's going to be fine. I'm going to let him go. I'm not going to bother him. He's okay. I'm going to let him practice. Then Kyoko shows up. And it's like, hey, bitch, want to rumble? She's always eating something. Like, she has a churro in this. And she's like, you wasted your miracle on something stupid for somebody else when you should have done it for yourself. Now, I don't know what Kyoko wished for. That'd be cool to find out. But her solution of, here's the thing. As much grief as I've given Sayaka, when Kyoko went through this whole, like, basically the plot of Misery and talked about breaking his legs and hands, that he'd never have to be able to use them again and he'd have to rely upon her, I was like, oh, Sayaka's a saint compared to this. I was like, never mind, we're good. I was like, oh my God, that's terrifying. Yeah, do that and he'll be yours and yours alone. And Sayaka's like, you're a monster and I hate you. Yeah, it is good to know that Sayaka and Kyoko are as far away from their personalities as possible. And it made me appreciate Sayaka a lot more because she didn't do something like that, because she does genuinely like him. And she's like, think of it as a favor to my fellow magical girl. And she's like, I'll never forgive you. And she's like, let's take this place someone else unless you want to attract a crowd. So, So, which is funny because by taking it away to where there's not a crowd, they go to an overpass where people are driving under them. I'm like, how did that make any difference? You were less crowded where you were. What? No. So we cut back to Madoka, and Madoka is doing Hey Diddle, the cat in the fiddle, the cow jumped over the move, the little dog laughed to see such sport in the dish, ran away with the spoon, and it looks like she's trying to convert it into Japanese. When, of course, Kyubey, she says somebody has to be in the wrong to balance out her need to be in the right, which I'm not sure. She's like, how could I do that? And I guess her being in the wrong is her throwing the soul gem over the side of the bridge, being like, well, I'll be in the wrong and be the bad guy, and then everybody will support her. And I'm like, instead, she nearly kills her. And I'm like, oh my God, Madoka, don't listen to your mom for advice anymore. Kyubey, of course, tells her that Sayaka's in trouble, and they go to this random overpass, which looks like, you know, two gemstones together. Again, the bridge design and the overpass of this is just, it's ridiculous. It almost looks like a boss level for a video game, right? And she's like, it's party time. And her nail is the gemstone, like the eye. It looks like an eye. I do love her magical transformation, though. And her soul gem is the eye there. And Sayaka is about to transform when Madoka shows up. And then, of course, Homura is right there being like, this isn't what we agreed upon. Like, she just immediately was there. And she's like, well, she's not going to back down either. And she's like, you've got until I'm done finishing this. And she's like, that's plenty of time. So Homura's like, we're just going to stop this right now. Homura's like, I'm going to just knock Sayaka out again. We're going to be done with this. You can finish your Pocky Stick and we'll be fine. But Sayaka is not going to back down from a fight. And that's when Madoka takes away the soul gem and tosses it into the truck. I wondered when she tossed it, if it breaks, what happens? If the soul gem snaps or crushes or explodes, are you instantly dead? I'm assuming that's it. You just die. And that's all there is to it. Now, the interesting part here is the location of the soul gem on your body your weak point? Because Mammy's was on the flower on top of her head. So when the monster ate her head, it probably crushed the soul gem, which made her body just dissolve, right? Is Kyoka's in her chest. If she gets pierced in the chest and breaks the soul gem, will she just will the body just shut down too? Same with getting pierced in the stomach by Sayaka. I guess if you pierce Madoka in the ass, from what it looks like, with the gem from the end card. And then Homura's, I don't know exactly where hers is at. It looked like it was in her arm or something. But Homura instantly is like, oh shit, the soul gem, and goes after it. So that's curious too. Like, I'm sure that she went and got Sayaka's soul gem because she didn't want Madoka to freak out, because she was being kind and didn't want Sayaka to die permanently. But like, what happens if the soul gem gets taken by somebody else? Will it become that of a witch? Was she afraid of that? What were the consequences of letting the soul gem go and not bringing it back, other than Sayaka dying? We don't know. But apparently if it gets more than 100 meters away from you, it's like a walkie-talkie. Once it's so far away, it doesn't work anymore. And then that's when she just like collapses and the body's like, nope. And then Kyoko's like, why is she dead? And then Madoka, or not Madoka, Kyubey goes, oh, that was bad, Madoka. What? How could you just throw away your friend like that? And I'm like, oh, fudge. I was like, shit, no. Like, Kyubey is just so blunt and matter of fact. Like, why would you do that to your best friend? Are you crazy? And then she, like, lifts the body up and she's like, it's just a shell. She's dead. And that shot of the three of them, like, shadows, and Kyubey is just like looking off in the distance like, what? What'd I do? Oh my god, what? You don't want to be part of my pyramid scheme no more? Yeah. Also, the fact that Kyoka can just lift her up with one hand, it should be a sign that, yeah, she's just a shell of a person too now. And that's why she has this magical ability. I don't understand what Homura's like. She has that magical disc on her arm. Looks like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Like dual disc. Is that where her soul gem is? In the arm thing? She runs really fast towards the truck, though. And I wanted to try to see if I could catch her. She's running, like, really super fast towards it. Like, ridiculously fast. So I'm like, And she manages to, like go super fast. And that's when she goes to the back of the truck. Meanwhile, they're like, what happened with Sayaka? What's wrong? And Kyubey, she's like, I didn't want this to happen. And they're like, what is going on? And that's when Kyoko's like, hey. And Kyubey says, you magical girls can only control your bodies from 100 meters away at most. And just swishes its tail back like it's aggravated. And she's like, 100 meters? What the hell does that mean? It's like, you normally carry them with you, so accidents like this are rare. And that's when Kyoko kind of realizes what's going on with the soul gem. She's like, don't let Sayaka-chan die. And Kyubey's just like, oh, well, that's not Sayaka. That's just a shell. Like, Madoka's like, I guess I'm going to give Kyubey this. When he's pushed into a corner, he does tell the truth. It's just not what you want to hear. At all. I was like, oh my god, you just threw Sayaka away. And that's when Kyoko realizes the soul gem in her chest is her actual soul. And so I wanted to see, yeah, so Homura got on top of it. I couldn't ask you to fight witches with a fragile human body. Yeah, and she like crawls over towards it. I love it. A magical girl's old body is nothing more than a piece of external hardware. And then I love Homura going towards the egg. Your actual soul is given a much safer, compact form that is capable of controlling magic much more efficiently. We'll just put in this little device. This is you. You're this little device now. Look how great you can control magically. And you can literally, like Neon Genesis Evangelion, you can use your body like an Eva, essentially, is what it's become. Now, this one part here where Homura picks up the egg and looks at it, like, for the most part, she has always this scowl on her face, but the moment that we get the close-up of her and the egg, her eyebrows instantly lift, and she looks really sad. Like she picked up the soul gem, like she felt sorry for Sayaka being trapped in that soul gem now. I'm so curious about Homura. She has so much mystery surrounding her. I love it. But she honestly looks like she feels sad in this moment. Like, this is what you've been reduced to. She's like, it's part of my job when I complete a magical girl's contract. I'm like, you keep saying you have duties, Kyubey. This is part of your job that you're doing. Like, don't get mad at me. I'm just doing my job. Don't get mad at me. It's just part of my duties. It's just part of my contract, my own contract. What, does Kyubey have a contract with someone? What is this? What's going on? Why is this happening? It's part of my job. When I complete it, I extract your souls and turn them into soul gems. And Madoka's like, the fudge? Girl, the moment I heard that out of that cat demon's mouth, I'd been like, well, that was nice, but I am not becoming a magical girl now. No way, Jose. And then Kyoko says, what the hell did you do to us? He's like, you bastard, you turned us into zombies. Yeah, basically. And he's like, isn't it more convenient? Uh-huh. Poor Madoka. But yeah, even if your heart is torn to shreds or you lose every drop of blood, your body can be fixed in no time with magical healing. That's the problem, though. We go back to this whole, like, cycle here. Kyubey's like, oh, well, your body's indestructible now. Your heart can't be torn to pieces anymore. You're indestructible. You're invincible. You know, we just got to use magical healing, which, you know, will cause the soul gem to become impure, and then you got to kill witches to fix it. It's like, no, you're just creating another cycle. Yep. And you're basically invincible, provided your soul gem is intact. Isn't it far more advantageous than fighting with a human body full of vital organs? My fear is that Madoka is going to get broken, and she's going to get pushed to the brink, and she's going to think, maybe it's better if I became a magical girl with an invincible heart, an invincible body. As long as my soul gem, as long as I keep that safe, then it'll be fine. That's what I'm afraid of. If I were Madoka, I would never become a magical girl at this point. I'd be like, nope, I'm fine. Forget that. But that's why Homura wanted her to forget about Sayaka, because she's like, look, you can't do anything for Sayaka now. She's eventually going to expire. It's a done deal. It's too late for her. But Madoka didn't listen. And she's like, well, that's awful. And Kyubey just flickers that tail and says, you're all the same. You always react like this when you're told what's really going on. I'm like, yeah, because it's freaking terrifying. He's like, I just don't get it. I'm like, you're freaking terrifying, cat. No way. Why are humans so touchy about the placement of their souls? I'm like, oh my God. But that's when Homura brings back the egg and gives it to her. And she flicks that hair, and then it brings her back. Like, the walkie-talkie got back in range. And I wondered for a second if she could, like, even remember them. If she'd remember what was going on, or if she, like, would get total amnesia. Because in that moment, she's like, what? What's wrong? Like, she just lost signal, and then came back like nothing had happened. It's like, that's terrifying. That makes you question, like, like what is real anymore. Like, are you really even? I'm wondering if Madoka's gonna be like, are you even Sayaka anymore? I mean, she is. It's her soul, but she's like, because you aren't even here unless that gem's in your hand or near you, and it's like, yeah. Oh my god, this episode was insanity. This episode was crazy, and now we have this mother trucking. Kyubey on the other side there, looking at us the entire time. What are we gonna do? Oh, what can we do? That is the question. So, yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to wait till the next set of comments before watching episode 7. I just don't know. It'll depend on my schedule, but y'all, I cannot wait to hear your thoughts down below. But I hope y'all enjoyed this reaction and discussion. The mystery deepens. So I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back real soon with more Puella Magi Madoka Magica. Bye!